Continuing on with section 1.3. When you see rationalize the denominator, it means you need to get rid of the square root sign under the fraction bar. And this is how you do it. See how we have the square root sign underneath? You're going to multiply by the square root of whatever that number is on the bottom and on the top. What will happen is you'll multiply the numbers on top together. In this case, since the A is not under a square root and the B is, it would look like that. And on the bottom, the square root of B times the square root of B would be the square root of B squared. And the square sign and the square root sign cancel each other out. So it will look like this. The same thing on top, and you'll just have plain old B on the bottom. So let's try some of those with actual numbers. We have the square root of 3 on the bottom. So we are going to multiply by the square root of 3 on the bottom and on the top. So on the top, the 2 is outside, the square root of 3 is next to it, and on the bottom, we have just a plain 3. And we're done. The next example, we have the square root of 5 on the bottom. So we multiply by the square root of 5 on the bottom and on the top. Now, since the square root of 2 and the square root of 5 are both underneath the radical sign, we can put the answer to 2 times 5 together underneath, which is 10. And on the bottom, we have just plain 5. Final answer. Let's see if you can try 3C on your own, and I will do 3D with you. We have a square root of 10 on the bottom. So we're going to multiply by the square root of 10 and the square root of 10. So this negative 2, that's going to stay out front. These are going to join together and become the square root of 20. And underneath, we're going to have plain 10. Now, this is one that can be further reduced. If you look at the example above it, the 2 and the 3, you can't simplify 2 over 3. We can't further reduce the square root of 3. But there's a couple things that we can do with this problem. First of all, the negative 2 and the 10, since those are both not underneath the radical sign, we can simplify those. That will simplify to negative 1 over 5. Now let's think about simplifying the square root of 20. If we factor tree this, we can break it into 4 times 5 and 2 times 2, which means the 2's will come out, the 5 will stay, and on top, right where the square root of 20 was, we will have 2 times the square root of 5. The last thing would be 2 times the negative 1 times 2 together, which would give us negative 2 square root 5 over 5. That's the final answer. We can't reduce 2 over 5, and we can't break down that square root any further. Go ahead and try 3E, and I'll do 3F with you. We're going to multiply by the square root of 3 here and the square root of 3 here. So, on the top, we have the negative 12 out front, so I'm going to write that. The 2 times 3 is going to become the square root of 6, and on bottom, we have plain 3. So what can we reduce here? Well, negative 12 divided by 3 is negative 4. And can we break the square root of 6 up? No, we can't further simplify that. So that's the final answer to 3F. Just like terms kind of look the same, like radical terms have the same number under the radical sign. So it doesn't matter what number's out front, it just matters what number's underneath. So those two would be like radical terms. If I gave you 5 square root 3, then 10 square root 3 would be a like radical with it. Why? Because the square root of 3 and the square root of 3 make them like radicals. So let's try to add 5 square root 2 and 3 square root 2. Since they are both square roots of 2, all we need to do is add the 5 and the 3. 5 plus 3 equals 8, and we recopy the square root of 2. You don't need to mess with it. You just recopy it. That's it. Let's look at 4b. We have the square root of 3 and the square root of 12. So those are not like radicals. So we need to do something so that they are both the same. Well, we can't really do anything to the square root of 3 because it's already as simple as it gets. But if you remember from yesterday, we can factor tree the square root of 12. We could break it into 4 times 3 and 2 times 2. A pair of 2's would come out, and the 3 would stay underneath the square root sign. And so we have just replaced the square root of 12 with 2 square root 3 instead. So I'm going to copy the 5 square root 3 and then that minus sign in front of it. And now we have like radicals. So all we need to do is do 5 minus 2. 5 minus 2 is 3. So we have 3 square root 3 for the final answer. Let's see if you can simplify 4c and combine them. When you do it, your final answer should be, so I should see a whole bunch of work, I should see a factor tree. The final answer should be -2 square root 2. Good luck.